Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of this NutriInsights series. My name is Álvaro Guzman, and I am part of the editorial staff here at NutriNews International. And today we're happy and pleased to welcome Dr. Haroldo Silva Rodrigues, who will be our invited speaker for today's session. Dr. Rodrigues holds a PhD and a master's degree in genetics and plant breeding from the Federal University of Viçosa, as well as a degree in agronomic engineering from the Federal University of Amazonas. He has a focus on plant breeding and quantitative genetics, and quite some extensive expertise in genetic improvement, hybridization, and haploid induction, and quantitative genetics. And today, we will be exploring some of his insights in plant genetics, especially in advancements in corn, and assessing how this can improve and enhance livestock feed efficiency. So, Dr. Rodrigues, thank you for joining us and accepting our invitation. It's a great pleasure to have you with us.
Okay, thank you, Álvaro. It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm free to answer in the best way I can all the doubts and questions you may have.
Thank you. That sounds great. So for starters, can you give us an overview of the current adoption rate of genetically modified corn in Latin America, and how does this compare to other regions around the world?
Yeah, as you know, now in the current days, current GMO crops, they are all around Latin America. If you look especially to Brazil and Argentina, they are the second and third biggest GMO producers in the world, and they play an important role in food safety. Also, Paraguay, Uruguay, most like places where there is like industrial production of corn, there is GMO.
Okay.
And I believe that few countries, for example, as Mexico, as you know, a center of diversity of corn, places as Peru, a center of diversity of corn also, and we have to be a little more careful with this kind of technology. I guess we're going to talk about it in the next questions, but we also have adoptions in different levels. There is production, of course, and there is research. Some countries, as you know, they do have some agreement to do research with GMO, mostly in university, in governmental companies, but they don't go to production.
Okay.
And you know, as Brazil and Argentina, as I told in the beginning of this answer, are the second and third biggest production of cereals. They have this big role. If we talk about soybean and corn, which are the biggest sources, I guess we have one of the biggest sources we have today in protein and carbohydrates.
Yeah.
And most of it in both countries, they are GMO.
Okay.
And as I told you, the biggest concern I would have today is about contamination in Creole populations with those traits that are introgressed or engineered into the genome. And talk about numbers, if we take the GMO in the Latin America, talking about Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Bolivia, the sum of hectares is around 90 million hectares. It was last year. So it's a huge area. To have an idea, corn in Brazil is 21 million hectares, so it's more than 4 times it. If you take all those countries that I just talked about.
Wow. Yeah, it's pretty interesting and a nice topic and to think about, and it's also a very delicate topic in certain aspects. So thank you for those insights. And what are some of the specific challenges or opportunities that farmers in Latin America face when trying to integrate GMO corn into their production systems, and as well, for example, for farmers working with livestock, like how can they integrate some of these products into their systems, and what challenges and what opportunities are there?
Yeah, I guess today the biggest challenge, in my opinion, is not scientific or technological. The biggest challenge today is public opinion, because we have all those advertisings pro GMO, all the advertising against GMO. And in my opinion, in both cases, there is more propaganda than real information. Even if you go to the side that it's favor to it, and also the size of the population which is against it. That's a big challenge into, we have been consuming GMO for more than 30 years today, since the first tomatoes, those flavor saver tomatoes were released, and maybe the last 20 years with more heavy use of it. And I guess if I walk in the road today here and I talk about which problems GMO can do to someone or to some animal, people think maybe you're gonna born with a third eye or stuff like this. And in 30 years there is no case of any stuff like this. Of course, you have also legal cases where happen in US with tacos, with GM corn, and it's public information you can find anywhere in the internet, of allergy and this kind of stuff. And it happens with any new technology, and especially with food and feed, which is strategic for food security in the world. It's a big challenge to, it's not only develop the technology, it's developed a full package of use. And maybe what the companies have failed in this year is put information of the population as part of the package. You can develop a trait, you can develop agronomic behaviors with it, you can develop machinery, but you have to develop also the information so it could be bought. Yeah, as we know, we are slaves of the market, every one of us. If you work in a university, if you work in a private company, there is no, if you develop a product, if nobody want to use it, it doesn't matter how good your product is. So public opinion is one thing they should work a lot. And I guess, in my opinion, the biggest way to do it is through information, and let people decide what they want or they not.
Yeah.
And also there is another point to add here, a challenging for farmers in Latin America. They are also, it's happening this last year a lot here, as I am in Brazil today, exportation blockages from countries. For example, in Europe, they are GMO-free area. And I guess, I don't know if you were aware of all these conflicts about political speeches from the president of France. They don't want the meat from Brazil in Carrefour, and they say, no, this meat does not meet our standards. And in the other hand, Brazil exports meat to everywhere in the world, China, halal meat to Muslim countries. So I don't know what kind of extra quality we need to do this kind of exportation to France, for example, talking about this case. And also there is a point that comes together with it, with protection of regional market. In Brazil, we have more than one crop planted and harvested in 1 year, so we are very competitive. And sometimes it's hard to compete with the production prices, the cost of goods here in Brazil. So of course, I understand each country has to protect their own market, their own population, their own production, and their own farmers.
Yeah. Yeah, those are very interesting topics and things that sometimes are maybe overlooked and that should be assessed better, both like by the companies selling the products as well as the people doing the science and the research, because as you mentioned, it's like the technology is there, it's great, but you also need to bridge that gap in being able to be very effective at communicating to the public and breaking down a lot of those myths. And well, then there's the whole other side, that's the political aspect, which is very complicated and has a lot of different facets. So it's not that the product itself is the problem, it's more being able to sort out those other challenges. So that's very interesting. And sometimes we overlook that, or depending where you're at, some places that are very niche, or if you're just working in research, you might overlook that. And that's a very important aspect if you want to get your product consumed and to change the public opinion. So thank you for those very helpful and great insights.
That's a point I wrote down to talk in another question, but maybe I can mention a little bit here. Maybe in the 90s, beginning of the 20s, scientists just were hired and they just care about doing the research. And today with YouTube and kind of channels to reach population, it's changing a little bit. You see lots of scientists with YouTube channels informing population. This is very positive in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important. And that's also like the idea of these types of initiatives is being able for the public to have access to good information and for them to form an opinion and not always be biased or something by other types of speeches, right? And I think that even scientists being able to communicate their messages to a broader audience in a way that the audience receives it well, I think it's very valuable to bridge these gaps. So that's very, very interesting, and it's a great point. And moving along, how has the introduction of GMO corn impacted the nutritional quality of the current crops we have or that you have in Latin America, as well as has it made it more affordable in general, both for human consumption and for its use in livestock feed?
Yeah, there is a trend, Alvaro, we're gonna hear more and more about it in the future. In Brazil or in Latin countries, it's not so strong so far. When I talk about animal feed, it's happening already in food for humanity consumption. It's gonna raise with time, which is biofortification. But yeah, I don't know if you heard about, but there is the very famous case of the golden rice.
Mm-hmm.
Rice, there is no beta carotene in regular rice. In some companies, like governmental companies around the world, for example, IRA with IRRA and some other governmental companies, they join forces together and they develop this transgenic rice, which is the golden rice, and they put the beta carotene on it, which has vitamin A on it. And one very noble stuff they didn't get any patent, they distribute for humanity to use. and this rice has been used in populations in places as Africa and in fighting blindness by deficiency of vitamins and stuff like this. So talking about feed, there is not such big importance in Latin America now. Nowadays, I see people, that's my opinion, I see people worried about volume, production and high yield. But I believe as we raise in the Marlow pyramids, we start to worry on about quantities. Biofortification will also be an important point to be aware of in animal feed. For example, if you go to United States, then you want to buy a corn for silage to feed your cows. You wanna know the quality of this corn, how digestible in it. We have research about it in Brazil. People know about those points, but it's not the biggest concern of the production of the farmer when they buy it. Today they are looking for volume and quantity, high yield, and not too much. They're not too much worried about quality so far.
Okay. Yeah, that's also a good point. Maybe that'll change. I think it also takes some work on the research side of thing of being able to communicate that to the producers so that they're aware of why they should be looking for that nutritional quality and just not assessing the volume. But again, it's something that the message needs to be conveyed efficiently and in a good point, well, in a good manner, so that people change their perspective, right? And
Yes.
going into, and you already touched on this a little bit, but in key livestock producing countries like Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico, how has GMO corn helped improve productivity? You a little bit talked about it already, but do you see or do you believe this has helped producers reduce costs by including these types of products in their production systems, or is there like any information on that you know of?
Yes, there is a lot of information to talk about this topic. For sure, GMOs have helped to improve producibility. The yields have raised. I didn't brought here today, but there is lots of studies and graphics showing the impact of yield after GMO corn, for example, was adopted by the market. If you look to the average yield of the countries without and with and without GMO corn, for example, Brazil, there is like 6 tons by hectare of yield. We go to Chile, which is more temperate corn, and temperate corn yields more than tropical corn in general. And Chile, 11 tons. Argentina, 7.5 tons. If you go to Paraguay, 5.3, it's very similar to Brazil. If you go to Peru, Ecuador, Venezuela, Mexico, they don't have legally, they don't have GMO corn. I believe also, I know Peru and Mexico, they don't. I believe also Ecuador and Venezuela, the yield go to 3 to 4 tons. And it's very important to take a time here when I talk to Mexico and Peru, because as we talked in the beginning, they are a center of diversity of corn. In those places, you have to be very careful introducing or not GMO to a species which is native from the area. They have native populations, and the pollen of the corn goes everywhere with the wind. And imagine what could happen if some wild population get GMO pollen on it in the next generation. There is this gene there with more competitive plants. They will start to overtake the native plants, and we're gonna lose a lot of biodiversity.
Yeah.
So in this place, Mexico, it's all about tortillas and tacos and burritos. It's all made by corn, using corn. So it's like a special case to look to introduce your nut
Okay.
or GMO corn.
So yeah,
Talking about corn. Sorry, and if you look to two temperate countries with high technology and rich countries, you can talk about US and Germany. US uses GMO corn, and the average yield of corn in US is like 10 tons by hectare. Germany is like 7.5, so one quarter less. And it's very easy to understand why. One of the biggest traits in GMO corn is worm protection. There is a protein that the corn it's producing, synthesizing a GMO trait, which is a protein. When the worms eat it, happens a crystallization in all the digestive system of the worm, and the worms die. So imagine regular corn, you spray a lot of insecticide to protect it. You have a GMO corn, the worm will try to eat and will die. You don't have to spray that much. You spray for other stuff, not for the worm. You spray for stink bugs and stuff like this. So there is less cost use insecticides, and there is more yield because the foliar area is complete. It's the same if you have your home with solar panel, and solar panel is full of holes or full of shade over it. Will photosynthesize less than solar panel, clean and working perfectly. So there is less cost of production because you spray less pesticides, and there is more production because the plant is complete, is not stressed. Any damage you do, the plant is stressed. And it changes its cycle, it changes the yield, and there is lots of biochemical and stuff that happens in the plant when it's attacked. It defends itself, and it means energy expanding. This energy is not going anymore to the grain. You asked also about the challenging of the GMO use is the cost of development. In US, for example, is the average cost is like $20,000 million and take over 14 years. In Brazil, if I can remember well, we have a governmental agency for regulation of GMOs. It takes like 11 years to get an approval because there is a lot of tests and legal stuff to solve before it goes to market. So they are very strict with this use. And imagine most of GMOs today, like big GMO traits they're using in the market, talking about grains, they were developed by multinational big companies because they have the money, and they have the time and the scientists to do it. It's very hard for a governmental company to develop because investment, they are always needing money for healthy, money for education, and the rest goes to research. For example, Alvaro, there is GMO corn. Corn is big crop around the world. There is GMO sugarcane. There is GMO soybean. But have you heard about GMO passion fruit?
No.
The market is smaller, but it could help a lot of farmers also. But there is not an economical importance and need that could make a big company go and develop. So that's the big role of the governmental companies, develop traits in those more neglect crops.
Hmm.
In Brazil, for example, we have transgenic. It's kind of brand new. We have a transgenic common beans. You know, Brazilians eat common beans every day. We have a transgenic common beans now. I don't know if it's in the market, but should be very soon, which is resistant to a bacteria. So if you don't have the bacteria problem anymore, we're gonna yield more, we're gonna reduce the cost, and there is a social impact. You see what
Yep.
I'm talking about.
Yep.
One of the challenging is to raise the awareness of the not big crops in the world also can be benefited by this technology.
Yep.
And if not, we are not talking about quantity, I'm sure they could be improved if we talk about biofortification, as we talked before.
Yeah, that's very true. And it's very important
Yeah,
when we're talking about food security, right?
yeah.
So
Sorry, Alvaro, just another point,
yep.
another big challenging the government have to find a way to deal with. It's fusion of big companies. And I guess the biggest challenge for GMO is monopoly that can happen.
Yeah. Yeah, because that also is what moves the market or what generates that focus is just left, as you say, on certain types of crops and many other uh, foodstuffs or like sources of food for the population that are important are just left behind, right? Because they're not under the economic interest of certain
Exactly,
companies or huge
exactly.
companies. So this is something very interesting to bring and a very important point when we're assessing food security. So yeah, makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
So yeah, that's very, very interesting and definitely
Mhm.
some food for thought.
Yeah. Alvaro, for the next questions, I wanna answer the five and six together, if it's okay for you.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, jumping into that, as we were talking, and as public opinion is very important in driving a lot of this, and as well as what companies do or what not. Environmental challenges and sustainability are a huge topic, and they have been for quite some time. But there's also a lot of controversy behind that, and also a lot of, I would say, biased information or disinformation, and this is something that needs to be addressed. And under this context, how does or how do GMO products and crops play a role in addressing sustainability challenges? And how does, for example, GMO corn help mitigate some environmental concerns like land degradation, water scarcity, and climate change in general in Latin America and even in the world at large? You mentioned a little bit of for example, being able to reduce the use of certain insecticides and certain products, and that's obviously a benefit. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that and in general, what benefits or environmental benefits we might get from these type of products?
Yeah. There is lots of initiatives around the world when you talk to mitigate environmental impacts using GMO. There is direct technologies that go direct to it, and there is some indirect impacts from other GMO technologies. There is some research, and I'm going to mix GMO with biotech here. There is some biotech corn. I guess you heard about because it was very famous when people were starting to do it. I guess even companies as Coca-Cola, they were trying to help on it, that were using corn to produce bioplastic.
Mhm.
So bioplastic produced by vegetable. I don't know exactly how it would be done, but this is very, very positive. Imagine if you don't have to get carbon trapped underground, pump it out, and throw in the atmosphere and get plastic from it. Imagine if you have a plant that could capture the carbon from the atmosphere and build plastic with it.
Hmm.
So there is this research. I know there is some bottles in Brazil with bioplastic. When you buy water in Brazil, see it's very soft.
Mm-hmm.
And there is the advertising, it's bioplastic. They use fiber and vegetable stuff. And I guess I don't have to explain myself too much and how good it is to use plastic by carbon you got from the atmosphere instead of using carbon that was pumped underground.
Yeah.
You're not pumping CO2 in the air. You are taking out, and there is a lot of initiatives or governmental initiatives and meetings around the world, COP, blah blah blah. And there is a lot of stuff trying, people working on it, trying to find a way to get this done. And this is, in my opinion, is a good technology to help in it. Also, there is a lot of stuff, Alvaro, in water efficiency use. In corn, you research a lot of it. There is also biotechnology trying to introduce genes that make the plant produce using less water. And it's not the savior of the world, because we don't have to misunderstand this topic. Our body, for example, is made, most of it is water. Most of the plants is also water. So in my opinion, with the technology we have today, it's impossible to reduce like 50% of the water use of the plant. But there is this research being doing, people all around the world research on it, water efficient use, and there will be an impact on the water use in the future. I don't know how much will be it, but in my opinion, there will not be that big. But together with it, there is the efficient use research. Nitrogen, phosphorus, all the nutrients. We are researching cultivars and hybrids that will do more with less. And that's the message about this efficient use research. In the last 20 years, the using of GMO have reduced the use of pesticides around the world in 80%. So it's not only cost, it's also the pesticides. Normally the farmers, they want to do extra doses, they protect more, or some they don't do this because they are bad or not. They just don't have the information or the education. And it can go to the water sources underground. So it's 80% is a good reduction, and the yield in the last 20 years raised at 22% by using GMO. So less yield, you need less area to produce the same quantity of food, and what we know, it kept from agriculture 20 million hectares around the world, which is like a Brazil planting of corn. To compare, it's kind of like to use almost all the national parks in the US to produce food. And of course, as we're talking about water, less area, less water use. and less tiling. They don't have to using tractors to prepare all this area. They are keeping the CO2 in the soil, and we believe that was kept in the soil 20 billion kilos of carbon that is not in the air by using tractors, which is the same the takeaway from the road to 12 million cars. So you can see the amount of impact that just a small technology, not a small, but one technology can help in environmental protection. High yields, less area, no exploration of native vegetation, and also you can recover and use the degraded areas. In Brazil, for example, we have sugarcane with the same protein from the corn that keeps the bugs away. So as I told you, less insecticides on it. We have the GMO corn and soybeans heavily used in Latin America. In Brazil, we have technology also for worm protection, eucalyptus. And you know, eucalyptus is easier to get approval because nobody eats eucalyptus. We use paper, we use eucalyptus on diapers, boxes, and toilet paper, and everything. Everywhere we are using eucalyptus. And these, if you talk about those numbers of the eucalyptus GMO, there is environmental impact, there is social impact, there is economical impact. In Brazil, the estimation is that with this technology, the yield raised more than 70%, and it captured 12% more carbon than the naked, we call naked when it's not GMO, the naked eucalyptus.
Mhm.
And also the profit of the farmers increased 28%, and the cost of production decreased 23%. And also, as people were producing more, they need more people, the jobs in this industry, in the eucalyptus industry, raised 34%. And one of the biggest challenges we have today was also helped by this, which is how to keep people in rural areas. Nobody wants to stay in the farm nowadays. It's very hard to find a workforce to go to the field. In United States, for example, less than 1% of the population is in the rural areas. So the estimation with this eucalyptus technology is people, they kept plus 27% people in the farms. And also there is lots of other examples, but other one I could talk here is common beans with this disease resistant that we talked before.
Yeah, that's amazing, and are very true and like examples that you can give of the benefits of this type of technology and products. So it's something that's worth bringing up and that people should be aware of, both producers as well as the public opinion, right? Because they're great benefits that have already been seen, as the examples you mentioned in Brazil, and then a lot of potential, right, behind, for example, the fixation of the carbon from the atmosphere, and so very palpable benefits, and that's amazing.
Yes.
So it sure is something that needs to be better advertised or better communicated, I would say.
Yeah.
And going a little bit into some of the technologies behind GMOs, for example, some of the genetic engineering tools like CRISPR, which are evolving rapidly. In the case of Latin America, what innovations would you say have been the most relevant in advancing GMO corn, for example, or other crops currently being used?
In Brazil, there is those cases where I talked about sugarcane. There is the bean, and also there is, for example, in more temperate areas, as you go to Chile, they have developed a trait for wheat, which elongates the cell, which means more yield for the wheat. There is in Argentina, maybe you know this INTA Institute of Agricultural Technology of Argentina. They added some genes in potatoes that keep the potato from turn brown. So it's more shelf life, means more shelf life to potato. Mexico, they have lots of studies trying to improve use efficiency of phosphorus in modified plants. Argentina scientists also this example I got here is very interesting also, Alvaro, because UC is not only for food and feed, but in Argentina they are engineering some genes in horses to get them more fit for polo playing. So they develop better muscle, more endurance, and more speed. So you see is also it's not only GMOs and CRISPR are not only used for food and feed, also for any social interaction in populations around the world. In Chile, they have lots of study also of CRISPR trying to study some resistance in salmons. In Colombia, the CIAT, they're studying using CRISPR in cassava and rice and try to make more digestible and introduce some resistance on it. Paraguay also has some studies in corn. So in CRISPR, it's not that new, but for the public, it's kind of new technology and still a lot of stuff to do. But there is a big potential. For example, we're talking about GMO corn, about the world. There is this trait that was introduced in the corn genome, and it's every time it synthesizes the protein. The protein is there every time the worms eat and the worm die. And as we talked in the beginning, one of the biggest problem about those traits that we don't know if you're gonna have some allergy or any digestible problem with a person who eats it. Imagine if you do the same stuff using CRISPR. It's possible, Alvaro, to introduce the gene there, but the gene is not synthesizing the protein. And when the worms eats, activates a chain reaction, the plant will produce the protein, the worm will die, the chain reaction will stop, and the plant will stop. And if you go deep on it, it also will have impact on the yield because the plant is not using more photostimulates to keep and produce this protein every time. So one of the points to be aware about CRISPR will be also ethics and public opinion. How far can we go?
Yeah.
I'm not the one to answer that question. It's a hard one.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's very controversial, and it's a delicate topic, and yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very true. And starting to wrap up what has been a very interesting conversation. As you know, sometimes many small-scale farmers and feed producers in Latin America and also in other parts of the world sometimes face barriers in adopting new technologies, maybe due to economic capacities, also sometimes because they don't know about certain technologies and maybe they a little bit less willing to adopt them. So what strategies do you think can be adopted to help these farmers gain access and benefit, for example, from GMO technologies?
Yeah, the first one's information, as I told you. For example, if I go, my father is a farmer and he's trying to get up to date, but it's not the same. For example, when I go to the field and I talk to new farmers, those guys, they went to a university to study agronomy, so they know what's happening. So, in my opinion, this will change in the next generation of farmers because they are getting professional and professional. For example, my grandfather, he was born in he knew farming because he was born in it, and he was his profession. And me, myself, and other friends, they are farmers today. They got a career on it. So we studied. We went to so I believe it will be easier for the new farmers to adopt new technology. And in talking about the technologies that are going to come in the future, they will be easily received, in my opinion, because now farming people see it as an industry also, not as just a primary sector stuff that stay away from the city.
Mhm.
And also, maybe the best way to address this to farmers to help the small scale farmers west is to develop it in new technologies like this in universities because they have the extension programs. They go to the farmer and maybe they will more friendly adopt if they know who that's not a big company from somewhere else that's going, or they are working, or this big company is working together with the university. I guess is a positive point for the society. And but also the university will face problems as we talked about numbers and support. They will need support for legal approval of anything they develop. In the university I studied, there is a professor who developed a GMO passion fruit with some resistance for some diseases. And he was talking to the big companies, please take it, just take it. I just want you to take it. I don't want anything from it, but I want it to be in the market because they don't have the support to go to all the legal phases, like a decade of paperwork and research to prove that's okay and go to the market. Uh, they also farmers they understand monopoly, so we have to work to keep monopoly away from most of those technologies, if it's possible, of course.
Yeah.
And focusing research for crops they are not the big time crops as corn and soybean, wheat, rice. Also, not forget the small crops; they could benefit a lot of this using this kind of technology.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think another big point there is that maybe the legal aspect of it should be revised as well, and that it shouldn't
Yes,
be so complicated or so cumbersome that only the big companies that can assume that type of uh, investment and that they can spend the time and money to wait for that will be the ones getting those products out. If something can be done on that aspect as well, of course, under a good legal framework, but that's more efficient, that would also give way to other smaller crops and for this type of technology to be applied there and for smaller companies or governmental organizations to be able to advance with that, right? And don't have that technology sitting in a research lab and being able to translate that into actual crops that the small farmers can benefit from, right? So that's also
yes.
very important and something that should be put on the table. So yeah, that's very true. And so yeah, I think you have touched on very interesting topics, and we have already spoken about the last question that I wanted to talk about regarding public misinformation or how can we be able to break some of the myths that occur. So I would want to skip that for now and just thank you very much for this great talk and for sharing your insights on such an important topic, very relevant for food security in general, for human nutrition, animal nutrition. And so it's been quite a enjoyable and valuable talk. And it's definitely true that GMOs have and will continue playing a major role in improving food security, not only in Latin America, but in the world in general. And just before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add or any final takeaways you'd like to leave our audience with?
Yeah, and, we have to understand, Alvaro, that today GMO is a reality. They are everywhere, and there will be more and more. They will be even in your cotton clothes, even in the plastic of the water we buy. So people have to understand what's happening. In my opinion, it should be taught in schools, in basic schools, in biology classes. And people have they need the right to be informed, and they should have the information and be able to decide if they wanna or they want not to consume it. So advertising also very important from the industry of the seed production, also very important. And I guess that's it. You don't have to force anyone to use or not to. Just have to make people understand what is it, and anyone be able to take their own conclusions.
Yeah, that's very true. If people have information and knowledge in their hands, they can decide for themselves. And I
Yeah.
think that's the important bit. And that's a very valuable piece of information to close this great talk. So thank you again, Haroldo, for your time and for accepting our invitation. It has been great, and we want to thank our audience for joining us. And hopefully, we will be able to have you again on our show, discussing some of these interesting topics and developments in this type of crops. And well, I hope to see all of you soon in our next NutriInsight series. So thank you and see you next time.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.